So let's look at every watch that I've ever purchased since the beginning. I have to get through this list fast, but I will say a couple of things before starting. One, I'm not including watches that I was sent by brands to review, even if they are watches that I love and wound up putting into my collection. I'm certainly not including watches that I never reviewed or didn't like, but I still own because they were sent to me. I'm not going to include things like the moon swatches, even though I have 6 or 7 of those, or any modded watches or bits and bobs like that. I'm going to stick to kind of just the hardcore center of the collection. This is not in chronological order. That would have taken me months to figure out. It's a long list, so let's get through it. We don't have much time. Starting with Seiko, there's the King Turtle with grenade dial. Love this watch, made a big video on it, very popular. This watch does pretty much everything you need a watch to do other than be dressy. You can't wear it with a suit, but you can wear it in every other environment. Then of course I have the blue version with the little manta rays on the dial. This is a watch I wear very often and I bring it to the beach every time I go. The cushion case and the silicone strap and so on, it's such a comfortable watch. The Samurai Shuuro edition, limited edition watch, very, very interesting, powerful looking watch. I took it straight off the bracelet, put it on the black rubber, and it's got to be one of the coolest watches I've ever owned. This one's quite hard to get now. You got to pay way over retail, find it on eBay or something. The Alpinist, the Sarb 017, very famous watch, of course. Made a big video on that. That actually wound up in the hands of my daughter's mom, who loved that video because it was set in Cortina up in the Italian Alps here. Fantastic watch. What are you going to say? It's nothing like a Sarb 017. I also picked up the Mountain Glacier edition, the SPB 197J1. This one's interesting because they originally released it in limited edition on straps, and then a year later released it on a bracelet for less money. So people were really peeved about that. It's got one of the coolest dials ever. In the end, a watch dealer actually convinced me to sell it to him. I made a little money on it, but I actually regret selling him that watch. That was a stunner. The King Sumo in blue, beautiful. I featured this in a video called Battle of the Beasts, where I'm comparing big, beastly watches. And actually this is the one that wins up against Panerai and Rolex and all sorts of stuff. So you can tell I'm a real Seiko fanboy. But before any of these, I actually owned a couple of mini turtles in black and in Pepsi on the blue rubber. I love those watches. I used to wear them to the gym all the time. And I had the Don Gray editions, both of them, the Turtle and the Samurai. They're limited edition, Europe only, very, very hard to get. You pay over retail for them on eBay. This, of course, is my very first luxury watch, the 300M. The 168-1628, which actually was the first of the automatic versions of this watch. I did a big video on this, of course, in Trieste here in Italy. It's still one of my favorite watches ever. If I never bought another watch after that, I'd still be a happy man. This watch does everything you need, and it's beautiful. And believe it or not, I had a coaxial version in black. These were released in 2007. I felt like it lacked a little character that the other one had. There was no wave on the dial and so on. So it just seemed a tad bland next to the blue one. So I only had that one for a few weeks. Then, of course, I had the ceramic 42mm, the 2018 and after release. It was a very, very beautiful watch, very cool. And I might consider getting another one. I think it's a great watch to have in the collection. The Electric Blue 225580. This one's pretty famous on the channel. I lost one to an ex-girlfriend. Then it was replaced very generously by Mark from the finewatchclub.co.uk. It's a big story about it. I made a video on it. I'll leave a link in the description below. And then, of course, there was the GMT version, the 300M GMT. Very strange because it's a GMT watch, but it's also a diver. It goes down 300 meters. That's very rare for a GMT watch. And yes, I had one of the Planet Oceans with the orange bezel, the 220950. Great watch. I had that for about 6 or 7 months. That was before the channel started. I think I traded that one for the coaxial Seamaster, which I ended up not liking very much either. So I was kind of going crazy and just swapping and changing out watches, searching my way through the watch hobby at the time. It was a great watch, very cool, looked great on me. Kind of miss it a bit. Then, of course, finally I got myself a Speedy, the Hesselite, the classic, on the bracelet in the big fat NASA box. Great watch. I had so much fun swapping out straps and putting on NATOs and just getting really into all the different looks of the Omega Speedmaster. And then, of course, I got the Sapphire Sandwich one, and I went through several different ones over a year or two until I landed on my favorite one, which is the 145022 on the 1450 bracelet, by far the sexiest of the lot. A truly great watch, and a very, very hard one to find in that specific configuration and in good condition. And in my opinion, way better than even the new one. I owned a new one for precisely a week. Brand new in the box with stickers and everything, the 3861 movement. Very nice watch, but I already had something that was way better. So I didn't really wear it and just sold it off. The Aqua Terras, yeah, these were really nice. I had the new one with the deep forest green and the previous one, the 150M Golf Edition, a little harder to find. That was my favorite between the two, and I did a video comparing both side by side. The Aqua Terra is just, it's kind of a one and done watch. Moving over to Breitling, this is like a mirror. This watch is beautiful, and the detail on the dial was astonishing. I ended up making a video in Sienna, which is some people's favorite video on the channel, and I really enjoyed filming this watch. It's quite a stunner. The only other Breitling I've ever had is the Chronomat version, 44mm, also a stunner with incredible detail on the dial. I don't know why Breitling gets such a hard time these days. I think they're still some of the most impressive and detailed watches made. IWC Portugieser. I've had two Portugiesers. The first one was in black. It was nice to finally get a Portugieser on my wrist, but it didn't really scratch that itch for me because I prefer the other configurations. I prefer the white dial with the blue accents, and of course the solid rose gold, which I got and I made a big video on. That watch is just dreamy. I've only had one JLC so far, hoping to rectify that issue at some point in the future, and it was a gold Reverso. Beautiful watch, a tad small on me. I think I should have gone for a larger size. Very, very difficult to film out in the wild, but really a stunning thing up close when you get in with the macro lens, just the detail. What can you say about the Reverso? It's an icon, there's no arguing. But now, of course, I want the rose gold version in the larger size. That's much more me. Another brand that I've only owned one of is Vacheron Constantin. I had the Royal Eagle chronograph, the greatest movement I've probably ever had in my hands, to no shape and a big heavy bracelet on it. I'm not sure why I didn't hold on to this watch. I probably should have. In Tudor, of course, I've had the Panda chronograph in 41mm, what I called the Lady in White. Did a big video on that. I believe I was actually one of the first in Italy to own one of those. It was kind of a hard watch to get for a while. It was trading over list. Beautiful watch, but a little hard to read at times, I've got to say. That was then, of course, replaced with the steel and gold version. Better contrast on the dial, and I still adore that watch. It's a beast. It's very me, the colors and so on, and the size. And I think it's one of the best chronos out there. I'd actually recommend it over a two-tone Daytona if you have the right size wrist for it. Still one of the best watches I've ever owned. Yes, I had the Black Bay Heritage solid watch. Very, very cool. It had that Tudor thickness, which could have been slimmed down. I believe it's been slimmed down in the Heritage models since then. but I still love the watch and it looked really good on my wrist. And yeah, I had a Harrods. I forgot about that. Oh my god, this is too many watches. Yeah, the Harrods was nice, but I got a nice offer on it, and honestly I wasn't wearing it very much, so I moved it on. Then of course the Black Bay Pro GMT, beastly little watch. This made a video on it with some heavy music in there, and it really suited it. I nearly lost this watch in the Grand Canal here trying to film it. Man, that was rough. It was either the watch or the camera, but in the end I managed to save both just by sheer luck. The GMT Pepsi, yeah, I had this one for probably a year and a half, 2 years. Gotta say, one of the best GMTs out there. Can't remember why I sold it. I think maybe I was in the market for the Rolex Pepsi GMT, so I didn't need two, something like that. Great watch though. And the 58 Blue, yeah, well, this is the watch everybody was going crazy about for a while. Too small on me. Amazing watch, made a video on it, but for a dive watch on my wrist, just too small. You know, it's a crime that I haven't owned more Panerais. I mean, they really, really suit me, these watches. I've owned the 210, which I did a pretty popular video on, with those wire lugs and that big open back. And then, of course, I have the 587 limited to 1,000 pieces. That classic vintage look, but with the 1940 lugs. This is a man's watch. All right, can I take a breather here for a second? Because now we've got Rolex. Oh, Jesus. This gets pretty crazy. Apologies in advance. The Yachtmaster, the rose gold, the 40mm Oyster Flex, the first of the Oyster Flex Rolexes. Complete stunner, made a big video on it, but I would consider trading it against one of the 42mm just because of that size difference. Yachtmaster 116622 in rhodium. I've actually had two of these, believe it or not. It's no secret that I think this is one of the best watches ever fucking made, and that's that. And I owned a blue version. This was during the spike in the market, and watches were going up like crazy, and I got a really nice deal on this perfect mint condition blue, and I was just curious if I'd prefer the blue, and I didn't. But the blue is beautiful. I mean, no offense if you own a blue. It's just, for me, the rhodium's that little bit better. The 5-digit Submariner date, pre-ceramic. This was my first subby. I felt kind of behind the times. I felt like everybody had a Submariner except for me. So I finally got one to see if it would make my life magical somehow. And it did a little bit, I have to say. I was really in love with that watch. I loved wearing it with, cafe racer leather jacket and with a nice shirt and a suit as well. It kind of went with everything. Then, of course, I moved into the ceramic version, the 6-digit, the 116610LN. I don't know how many of those I had, new and used. I'm not sure. I can't even remember, but maybe 2 or 3, 4, maybe. And I did have the no-date version, the 114060, which is almost better. And that was my pride and joy then for quite some time. Then I added the two-tone, but not the bluesy. It was the two-tone ceramic 116613 LN. So it was the black. And I did a video on that in Padova. And I adored that watch, and it became my most worn watch then for quite some time. Then, of course, I had a Hulk. Very cool, very strange looking watch. And obviously very, very popular. I did not hang on to that because the collection was just getting really big at the time. But it's a very cool watch, and sold it on to a fellow Irishman who wore it proudly. Then I went into the 6-digit 1-2 series, the 41 mil, the new release of the Submariner, the no date, the 1240-60, and then I had a bunch of the date versions. I don't know how many, 5 or 6. At the time, I had some friends who were getting calls at the AD because they were grandfathered in, and they weren't interested in keeping them because they were happy with their pre-ceramic version. So they'd sell them to me at a bit of a profit, and I just took them away in the bank. Crazy. And then, of course, finally with the Submariners is the solid gold 5-digit that I still wear almost every day to this day. Made a big video on that one as well. I love the deep blue, that royal blue, instead of the bright blue that they have on the 6-digit versions. It's one of the best watches I've ever owned, an absolute classic. The first OP I had was the 36 mil with the 369 and the silver dial. I think the reference was 11,6000. It was an absolutely beautiful watch. I don't know why I didn't keep that. I mean, a tad small on me, but it didn't matter. It was so classic and so perfect, so clean, you know. Made a lovely video on that just as COVID was hitting, and everybody was quite confused about what was going on. I'll never forget going around with that watch, filming it, and seeing people with masks on for the first time, and it was very, very spooky time. But yeah, beautiful watch. Should have kept it. Don't know what happened there. But the next OP I got was kind of replacing that then. I got the 41 mil with the silver dial and the gold accents. And that thing is a work of art. I think if you want a sports Rolex, look no further than the OP. It's just the perfect, simple, clean Rolex. The Explorer 1, of course, 39 mil, the 214270. Very beautiful watch. What can I say? Very elegant, very strong and simple at the same time. I think that was like a third or fourth watch I got from the authorized dealer. Before that, of course, there was the Yachtmaster 40, the Sub-Date, the two-tone. What else? I can't think. But yeah, great watch. More Rolex than most men ever need. And of course the Explorer 2, polar dial, 42 mil. Made a big video on that one that was very popular. Looks great on my wrist, nice big size. I've never owned one of the 40 mil versions. I was tempted for a hot second about 5 or 6 years ago to pick one of those up, but kind of glad I skipped over it and went straight for the 42 mil. It's an iconic tool watch from Rolex. I was surprised that I loved the Air King so much. It was the original one with the kind of larger body. I wore it a lot. It was very shiny. It was a beautiful piece of Rolex steel. What can you say? And then, of course, I got the new one, which I put side by side with the old one. I made a video about the comparisons there. I didn't hold on to the new one for very long. I shot the video, wore it a couple of times, and then I think I got an offer for it. So I was like, all right, I don't need this around. It was nice to have it for a short while and check it out, but it was essentially an Explorer 2 in a 40 mil case instead of a 42. You know, other than the dial, naturally, the whole shape of it and the presence on the wrist was like the Explorer 2. So I kind of preferred the original Air King because it was so wacky and had a lot of its own character. And I believe they removed some of that character on the new one. Milgauss, yes, what a stunning watch that is. The Z Blue, actually had two of them on the build-up toward Watches and Wonders when everybody thought it was going to get discontinued, and in the end it wasn't. That happened a year or two later, but it was during the spike when all the watches were going sky high, and it was considered like a hot watch. If it got discontinued, the Milgauss would finally become like a crazy collectible They're beautiful watches and probably the most attractive dial I've ever seen on a Rolex. I also had the black Milgauss with the green crystal that I put away in the bank and eventually found its way onto the wrist of my good friend Dirk from the iBashers. So yeah, I had a kind of a fleeting moment there with Milgauss and kind of regret not keeping one of them at least. Datejust, yes. Well, I got a blue dial fluted from BQ Watches, Spencer Dryer in London. That turned out to be a little bit messed up and problems with parts replaced and so on. And I learned a big lesson there. I had that watch for over a year before someone who has a sharper eye than I have noticed that there was something up with it. So I learned my lesson there. The bezel was replaced by BQ once I addressed the issue. Not sure if that only happened because I have a channel, but yeah, never again from those guys, unfortunately. I also had the grey dial version with the diamonds on the dial. I didn't wear it very much in the end. It wasn't really my style, but it was nice to have for a short while. And that, of course, was perfect. There was no issues with that one.
What is it?
Palm fronds. Yeah, I had one of those for a while too. That was crazy. It was too small on me. You know, by then I was getting into 40 mil plus size watches. The 36 was too small, but I accepted it. I was offered one at a good price and I took it because I was hoping to make a lot of videos on it, because I had made a kind of a parody video about the whole palm fronds thing with Lenny and Lenny's voice in the video.
When you're sleeping at night, you can dream about the palm fronds.
Yeah, the list continues, guys. It's crazy. It's not stopping here. The GMT-Master II. Well, my first one was the 116710LN, the Black Beauty, and still my favorite out of the lot, perhaps my favorite Rolex of all time. I had one with the green luminescence, the Super Luminova, so pre-2014, 2015. And I had a post-2015, 2018 one with the Chromalite that was new all stock. And I purchased that and put it in the bank. And eventually Nico Leonard bought that and we wound up in a spat over that for other reasons. And he lied that it was a beat up watch instead of new all stock. I kind of reneged on his whole story when it suited him. He forgets, of course, that I have a channel and I have lots of close-up shots of the watch. You can clearly see that it's mint. But yeah, he's just a dickhead, so there's no fixing that. Got the Batman. That was very cool. Not much to say really there. The Batman is the Batman. It's a good look. I wore it a lot. I'm not sure I prefer it though to the Black Beauty. The Pepsi, of course, came through. I had it for about 6 weeks. And actually, I think it was a good thing because I don't think it suited my wrist as much as the all black one. And of course, yeah, the root beer. What a stunner. Made a video on that one too in Verona. That, at the time, that was not my watch. That was a loaner for the video. I had it for exactly one weekend. I had to do all the filming and then hand it back to the guy. You can see up close it's kind of scratched up, that one, because he's a pilot and he uses it all the time and he doesn't worry about babying his watches or anything like that. Then I eventually got a root beer for myself later. And what can I say? It's just astonishing, that watch. I mean, it's one of the most handsome Rolex they make. Phenomenal. The colors are so odd and strange and chocolatey. It's an amazing watch. And a dream to film as well, I've got to say. Some watches are easier to film than others, and that's a joy to film that watch. The Sea-Dweller, the ST43, I actually got the steel and gold one before I ended up getting the steel. And I got it from my authorized dealer at a discount at the time. I think I paid $13.5 or $13 even. Love that watch, big beast. Then when I wanted the steel, I got on the list with my authorized dealer here in Venice. And I was waiting around and waiting and wasn't getting the call. So I just bit the bullet and I paid extra and got one on the grey. And within like 3 days of getting it, I got the call from the 80 and I couldn't turn them down. So I wound up with 2 SD43s. So it was kind of crazy. I wanted to spend 11,000 or whatever they were at the time, and I wound up spending well over 20 because now I had 2. It's nuts. It's just a weird turn of events. So I've had 3 SD43s in the end, the 2-tone and the 2 steels. The first Daytona I got was the steel and gold, and that was my very first musical video that I made here in Venice before I lived here. That was the one with the gold dial. And I kind of have that watch to thank for driving me into the whole romantic musical video thing, because it sparked off a lot of those kind of classical music ideas and so on. And I finally owned a Daytona, which was something I couldn't believe finally happened, because I always loved the Daytona from years ago, but never thought I'd be able to afford to buy one. So it was kind of monumental. Later then I got the TIE Fighter, as I call it, because I think it looks like Darth Vader's TIE Fighter. Beautiful watch, very evil looking thing. It was great to have finally a ceramic Daytona, and I preferred it to the Panda. The black is much more handsome than the Panda version, I think, even though the Panda is still more sought after. But then I got my eyes on a rose gold with the Sundust on the Oyster Flex, and that was a lot of money, that watch, so I had to make the decision to sell off the steel one to justify the rose gold. I did have both for maybe 2 or 3 weeks, but yeah, I just had to move the other one on. I got a really good offer, and it's put a very large dent in the price of the rose gold for sure. That rose gold was just astonishing, just a breathtaking piece of jewelry, I gotta say. And that's the end of the Rolex, I think. If you can think of any others that I've forgotten, just leave it in the comments below. Thanks. Well, my first AP was the Royal Oak chronograph in steel, black dial, monumental watch, amazing piece of excellence in horology. What can I say? The second one then was the offshore chronograph with the rubber bezel. Got that used from 2006, and it's very rare that the bezel is mint and untouched, because those rubber bezels have a tendency of wearing down with time. And though I got both of those pieces on the grey market, that second one sparked the relationship with the authorized dealer here at the AP boutique here in Venice, because I was buying new straps. So I got to know them naturally, got chatting with them in the store, and maybe I'd see them, pass by one of the cafes, wave or whatever. You get to familiarize yourself with the people, and then eventually I got the call for the diver. So that's 3 APs and counting. No Patek at all, not yet anyway. I kind of went down the AP road instead. Who knows if I do this list again in 2 or 3 years' time, what'll be included in there. But I have to say, it's a really cool thing to have had so many of these watches, and now I have a lot of perspective. So I'd be able to buy with confidence, if you know what I mean. So I don't regret a single minute of it, but it is kind of a disturbing list. Anyway, that was exhausting. Who needs a drink now? Jesus. Thanks for watching the channel, guys. See you very soon. If you feel very sorry for me after seeing all of that, it's perfectly understandable. Peace, love. See you in the next one.